Hi friends, my name is Emily. Welcome to the Wish You Were Here podcast. On today's spin-off episode, I'm going to be taking you through the settings of how to set up your camera in manual mode if you are a beginner photographer. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to check out some behind the scenes of how this episode was recorded, please visit my YouTube channel. These are going to be very brief descriptions and hopefully enough information so that when you pick up your camera, you have a basic knowledge of it and you can start practicing right now. The four things that I'm going to be talking about first is aperture, second is ISO, third is shutter speed, and fourth is Kelvin. First, for aperture, aperture determines how much of the items behind your focal point are blurry. If you have a lower aperture, that means that it's going to be very blurry behind your focal point. If you have a higher aperture, that means that the items behind the focal point are going to be more in focus. So lower aperture, more blurry, higher aperture, more in focus. Next thing we'll talk about is ISO. ISO is your camera's sensitivity to the light around it. So for example, if you were outside and it is very bright and sunny, you don't need your camera to be very sensitive to the light because there's already a lot of light around it. So it's going to have a low ISO. Versus if it was nighttime or if you were in a low light setting, your camera needs to be more sensitive to the light around it, so it's going to have a higher ISO. Third thing is shutter speed, and the best way I can describe this if you are a visual learner is think about the curtains opening and closing at a theater, or think about elevator doors opening and closing. A faster shutter speed means that it's going to open and close at a very high rate. And that means that it's not going to give your camera a lot of time to open and receive the light that's coming into it. Versus if you have a slow shutter speed, that's giving your camera a lot of time to open and receive the light that's coming into it. Now, on that note, if you think about that time as a fraction, like on a pizza or a pie, if you look at the shutter speed because it's in a fraction of a second, so 1/100 is a bigger fraction than 1/1000. And if you're looking at it in a slice versus of like slice of pies, 1/100th, 100th of a slice of pie is going to be a bigger slice of pie than 1/1000th, which means again, the bigger slice of pie, more time. Smaller slice of pie, less time. Last thing we'll talk about is Kelvin, and Kelvin determines how warm or how cool your image is. So just like the temperatures, how we read the weather, a lower temperature is going to give you a cooler image. A higher temperature is going to give you a warmer image. Now that being said, you can also set your Kelvin 3 different ways. You can set it manually, which means that you determine the temperature. The second way is to set it as an auto white balance, which means that your camera determines what the temperature is around you. And it also has the other settings where it can choose like tungsten light or fluorescent light or cloudy. And then last you can do is an Expo Disk, which I'll explain about that in a different video. That's how I started, and then I went to manually choosing my Kelvin. Having the basics of those 4 manual settings, I recommend taking your camera and start practicing. Start practicing photographing outside at all different types of the day. Notice the different light around you, how the shadows fall on certain objects. Photograph things that are indoors and different types of lights, and just experiment with those different numbers for those different settings. And I promise you, in no time, you'll understand it. It'll click. That's it for today's episode. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will make a follow-up video. I hope all of y'all have a great day, and I hope that y'all have a lot of fun practicing with these 4 basic settings of how to photograph in manual mode. I'll see you later. Bye, friends.